Hi guys, today we're going to be checking in on Plants vs Zombies Bitz, a fan-made PvZ platformer that promises a different type of garden graveyard experience we've not seen before. Combining aspects of both the modern PvZ shooter games and old school 2D platforming, PvZ Bitz is certainly a fan project you should be keeping an eye on. Over the last 3 months or so, development has continued at a steady rate, with a number of new features being added and further details announced. Whilst a release date is probably still a long way off, the project is in a good position with plans for a public beta as soon as possible. The game will be coming to PC, and depending on how well it is received, we could see an Android version also. Anyway, let's dive into what's been going on. So first up, let's talk about gameplay, since the last time a new video was released that showed off further development on the gameplay itself. One of the first things to note is the game environment, which has had a pretty significant upgrade. As shown in these side-by-side screenshots, you'll see a much more detailed skybox and background terrain. We now have more recognizable objects like mountains rather than what was more abstract shapes previously. In the footage itself, you can see some new flora and foliage, including these very tasty looking pink trees and holly bushes. Now, the gameplay you can see on screen hasn't really changed much for Pea Shooter. We've seen the jumping, movement and combat previously, but we finally have our first glimpse of a fully working potted plant, Potato Mine. Now, you can see here the sun can be used to purchase seed packets, so Potato Mine costs 2 sun for example, and you can place said plant into any pot that is available. Basically, these work just like the pots in the Garden Warfare games, but a sun cost is also involved. So Potato Mine works exactly as you'd expect it to. Place it in a pot, it takes a little bit of time to arm, and then any zombie who dares to get too close gets blown to smithereens. As well as Potato Mine, the only other new plant I have to show you today is Sunflower, who looks mighty adorable as always. The final development related to gameplay is the creation of what look like zombie totems or gravestones, I guess. Basically, the game is going to feature some dungeon type areas where you may have to face a couple of zombie waves, and presumably these areas will be marked by these purple gravestones. Also, very much like in the Binding of Isaac games, these areas may involve a boss battle that must be completed before the player can continue. The next piece of really exciting news is the custom soundtrack. As with all current fan-made PvZ games at the moment, having a custom soundtrack has kind of become the norm now, and PvZ Bitz is no exception. At the moment we only have one track called Enjoy Wave, but based on the high quality of this first piece, I can't wait to hear what else they have in store for us. This track was composed by the very talented JRivers, who has made a whole host of custom PvZ soundtracks on their YouTube channel. They quite recently released a pretty insane project where 12 musicians teamed up to create a 50-minute long medley of every Plants vs Zombies 2 world. So yeah, basically JRivers is more than qualified for this task. Anyway, here's a little preview for you, but a link to the full track is on screen now and in the description below. The final thing to touch on today is the main menu, which is coming together very nicely. Sticking with the retro style, the menu is very funky yet minimalistic. There's not like tons and tons of options or sub-menus, everything is straight to the point and includes what you'd expect. Although there is this extras menu which may suggest other mini games and modes. In the options section, again we have some pretty standard stuff, sound levels, etc. But there's also an option to turn on the CRT visual effect. So the CRT or cathode ray tube option was recently showcased by the creator in a community post. Basically, CRTs were a type of monitor that was used back in the early days of gaming. It'll become a lot easier to understand from the screenshots, but essentially it adds some of the retro looking color lines on top of the game to give it a more 80s feel, I guess. So this is the game without CRT, and this is the game with CRT enabled. As you can see, there's a pretty significant difference between them. Obviously, it doesn't change the art style or anything too dramatic, it just gives an effect you would associate with like the original Sonic games, for example. And the fact it's optional is great. I know some people out there will really enjoy this funky retro effect and others not so much, but either way, it's a very cool feature we haven't really seen before. Overall, as with the other Plants vs Zombies fan games we've revisited recently, PvZ Bitz has continued to develop at full speed over the past few months. The addition of new plants, an epic soundtrack, further mechanics and main menu are all coming together really nicely, and I look forward to keeping you guys updated throughout the year. Anyway, that's about it for today's video. As usual, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. But other than that, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, turn on notifications, and if you want to support the channel further, check out my Patreon page by clicking on screen now or through the link in the description. Okay, thanks guys. Bye. Bye.